Food rationing is coming as the supply shock of a lifetime is imminent. I'm your host, Steven Van Metre, and thanks for joining me today. And it's time to start stocking up again because the food shortage is about to get much worse. Let's head over to Bloomberg, who headlines that the grain market set for a supply shock of a lifetime, according to economists, as Russia's invasion of Ukraine puts tens of millions of grain acres at stake, according to a University of Illinois economist. Russia's invasion of Ukraine could devastate global grain markets so deeply that it's likely to be the biggest supply shock in living memory. And that's according to Scott Irwin, an agricultural economist at the University of Illinois. Tens of millions of acres of grain production are at stake, he said on Wednesday on Twitter. And I'm convinced it's going to be the biggest supply shock to the global grain markets in my lifetime, Irwin said, which is staggering that this could be that bad. But let's keep going because you're about to see it is. Ukraine and Russia together account for more than a quarter of the global trade in wheat, as well as a fifth of corn sales. Prices for those staple crops are soaring on concerns over supply disruptions at a time when global food prices had already reached record highs. And here you can see the global price of wheat skyrocketing. Now, it's not back to the prior highs of 2008, but I want to point out what happened here in 2008 is high food prices contributed to a great financial crisis. What happened here in 2011? We almost had a double dip recession. What happened here in coming out of 2014, when wheat prices were still high? We almost had another recession, and now we're headed that way again as food prices soar, and many Americans, in fact, many consumers around the world can't afford these higher prices. Let's continue on. Even before Russia's war with Ukraine, food inflation was already plaguing global consumers. Extreme weather has made it harder to grow crops, while shortage of workers and higher shipping costs snarl supply chains. The world's grain inventories are also very tight, so any prolonged disruptions to supplies from Russia or Ukraine has a potential to dislocate markets for years to come, which is absolutely staggering. Now, if there's one thing that you shouldn't be afraid of, it's what happens to your portfolio in terms of another recession. If you haven't taken a look, be sure to check out Portfolio Shield. I'll put a link in the corner and in the description below. You'll be glad you did. Let's continue on the story because, believe it or not, it gets worse. As soaring fertilizer prices are about to increase the cost of food. Russia is a major supplier of every crop nutrient, and higher supermarket bills will be a ripple effect of its invasion of Ukraine. Ben Rinsinchi, who farms 16,000 acres in Iowa, would be ecstatic to get $80 per acre selling his corn, but it'll cost him $240 an acre to feed the plants with nitrogen, triple what he's used to paying, if you can imagine that. And that's not counting what he'll spend on the two other important fertilizers, phosphate and potash, which he says each have doubled in price since he purchased supplies for his 2021 crops. Pandemic-induced supply bottlenecks and the rising cost of natural gas, a key production input, are among the factors sending fertilizer prices soaring. Add disruptions stemming from Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and consumers will be paying more for almost every plate of food. You think they squawk about having gas go from $3 to $4 a gallon, he says? Wait till the grocery bill is $1,000 a month. And here you can see natural gas prices still nowhere near some of their prior highs going back to the great financial crisis and back in 2005 and in the early 2000s, but still causing major problems even at these price levels. You only imagine if they go higher. And to think, I remember a time when they couldn't give natural gas away, and now it's a hot commodity. Russia is a major low-cost exporter of many kinds of crop nutrients. No other nation has the same breadth of readily exportable fertilizer supply, according to an analyst with Bloomberg's fertilizer analysis and news publication Green Markets. Their fertilizers move to all continents. If global trade in fertilizer is further disrupted, it will mean higher costs for farmers across the globe and in turn more food inflation at a time when global food prices have already been hitting record highs. The prices for the widely used nitrogen fertilizer urea in New Orleans surged 29% from previous week, a record for the 45-year Green Markets Index after Russia invaded Ukraine. And here you can see the producer price index by industry. We have nitrogenous fertilizer manufacturing covering synthetic ammonia, nitric acid, ammonium compounds, and urea, and it is skyrocketing. So the story just isn't about food prices and food shortages, it's about prolonged shortages due to higher fertilizer costs that are going to impact crops that have yet to even be planted. Let's continue on, as we could be tightening fertilizer supplies ahead of the North American growing season, and that would impact a whole year's global production, says Arlen Sunderman, chief commodities economist at financial services network StoneX. And that is the big story, my friends, is this food shortage is only going to get worse. So if you're not stocking up, perhaps it's time to, because in the past, not only have food prices continued to rise, but they've triggered a massive recession. Anyways, thanks for being fans. Thanks for watching. I'm Steve Van Metre. Bye now. The content of this video is provided to educational information only. It's not intended to provide investment advice. It is not to be construed as recognition or solicitation by our security, financial instrument, or participate in a particular trading strategy. This video was prepared by Steve Van Metre or personal capacity. Opinions expressed in this video that do not affect you, Alice from Advice Inc. or Steven Van Metre Financial.